All right, let's take a quick look at where everything stands in terms of the Israeli war with Hamas. So the Israeli Defense Force has started putting out these overview graphics similar to what we've seen coming out of Ukraine. They say that as of October 10th at 11 a.m. Central Time in Israel, 50 families were notified that their loved ones were taken hostages. 900 plus Israelis were killed. 2,741 Israelis were injured. 4,500 plus rockets were fired from Gaza, and 1,352 targets were struck. Now, that last number, 1,352, was Israeli striking Hamas targets, and more on that in a second. Now, the other side of that, the Palestinian Health Ministry in Gaza says that these airstrikes have resulted in at least 770 people who've been killed and 4,000 others wounded. They say among the dead are 140 children and 120 women. There were also reports coming out over the last day or so that upwards of 1,500 Hamas militants had been killed and their bodies were being recovered from all across Israel. So the fighting is very much ongoing at this stage as we're recording around 8 a.m. on October 10th, 2023. The majority of that is being carried out by Israel in terms of airstrikes inside of Gaza. Now, it's hard to understate the volume of strikes that Israel is conducting in Gaza right now. It's constant explosions. They say, the Israeli Defense Forces say, between Saturday and Monday morning, over 1,200 targets were hit by Israeli aircraft across the Gaza Strip, including weapons storage and manufacturing sites, command and control centers, rocket launchers, and more. Adding today, we doubled that number. Now, both Hamas and Israel have confirmed that there are hostages being held in Gaza. I haven't seen a set number quite yet. There's been fluctuations in terms of estimates, as low as a few dozen, as many as 100. I wouldn't expect a solid number to be released by Hamas, right? It's going to be in their best interest to keep that unknown, right? It's going to impact Israeli operations as they plan to move into Gaza. It's going to affect what and how they target different areas with airstrikes. It's in Hamas's best interest to not let Israel know how many hostages there are and where they're being held. Now, in terms of Israeli plans going forward, it does look like at least 100,000, as many as 300,000 troops have been recalled. Remember, military service in Israel is mandatory. They have a pretty effective mobilization process, all things considered. There's not very many places in the world where, a couple 100,000 troops can be mobilized in the matter of a couple days. That's relatively unique to Israel. And they do appear to be pulling those forces together. There's been a lot of footage of tanks, armored vehicles, and artillery pieces moving towards the border regions. Some of those headed towards Gaza, but there's been a lot of them heading north towards Lebanon, with the concern that this war could escalate into something broader with Hezbollah. Now, there have been cross-border attacks already. There's been some shelling taking place and direct fire engagements between Hezbollah elements and Israel. Hezbollah seems to kind of be on the fence right now as to how to proceed, whether they're going to go all in and attack Israel from the north, or if they're going to sit it out entirely, or something in between. Now, there is kind of a big picture argument, because both Hezbollah and Hamas are Iranian proxies, that they both would have been involved in the operational planning here and, kicking off a multiple front war with Israel, which Israel does not want. No country ever wants a multi-front war. But the fact that Hezbollah is kind of wishy-washy right now makes it look like they might not have known what was coming in terms of this major Hamas attack. Or if they did and they had a role to play, maybe they're getting cold feet after seeing how Israel has begun to respond. But take all of that with a big grain of salt. It's still very early. Now, in terms of what Israel is planning to do, there is an announcement from the defense minister saying that they're going to essentially lay siege to Gaza. Now, Gaza has been under essentially a blockade of sorts for quite a while now. It's nothing new. But what they're doing now is really ramping that up. They're shutting off all access to water, electricity, nothing in and out. In fact, I'll play the clip here from the Israeli defense minister.
אנחנו מטילים מצור מוחלט על העיר עזה. אין חשמל, אין מזון, אין מים, אין דלק. הכל סגור. אנחנו נלחמים בחיות אדם ואנחנו נוהגים בהתאם.
Now, a lot of people have keyed in on that last statement there, saying we're fighting human animals. And it's that sort of language, that mentality that makes it really hard to understand how there's really ever going to be peace in this region. Now, moving on to some external actors, namely the United States and Iran. The United States has moved a carrier strike group into the Eastern Mediterranean, both as a show of support for Iran. It's supposed to help deter further Iranian aggression, as well as forward staging assets that could assist in any sort of evacuation should U.S. citizens decide to leave Israel. Now, there have been some rumors, again, I haven't seen anything confirmed on this front, that American hostages are being held in Gaza. Being honest, that opens a whole can of worms. It's very hard to predict what the U.S. reaction would be if Hamas is holding American citizens as hostages in Gaza right now. There have been some reports, and this isn't shocking at all, this is to be expected, that the U.S. Joint Special Operations Command has been in touch with Israel, kind of providing tips and suggestions as it comes to hostage rescue. Again, nothing surprising there. The U.S. does this with any number of allies when this type of situation arises. I can't help but think what the public reaction is going to be if we start to see pictures and videos or statements released from Americans being held by Hamas. I don't know. I don't know if there's going to be a public push for U.S. forces to go get them out, if it's going to be more of a push for negotiation, or if it's a black box. Very hard to see the direction that takes. And lastly, kind of the big item here, the one that points to potential escalation in a lot of different directions, is Iranian involvement in all of this. Now, at baseline, there is Iranian involvement, right? We don't have to prove links between Iran, Hezbollah, and Hamas. Like that exists and has been there for a long time. It's not hidden. It's very well known. Iran has provided weapons and training to Hamas. That's not something that's under investigation, right? They're not trying to show that to the world as evidence of anything. What Israel and the United States and others around the world are likely going to be looking to is how much involvement did Iran have in actually planning and facilitating this specific attack, or directing it and saying that it has to happen, that kind of thing. Now, there's been mixed reports already. Right out the gate, there were some people in Hamas that spoke with, I think it was a Wall Street Journal reporter, and they said that Iran helped put it together. And then shortly thereafter, other Hamas officials, as well as Iranian officials, said we had no involvement. The U.S. intelligence community, the last I saw, is still trying to figure out if that connection exists. Again, as of right now, that still seems very much up in the air. But again, most of these news articles and reports coming out are looking at the question of Iranian influence in this specific series of operations. Right, at the very least, Iran holds indirect responsibility for a part of this just based off of their historic and continued financial and military support of Hamas. You cannot remove Iran entirely from this conversation at all. But that's all I got for now. If interested in general national security subjects, be it Israel and Hamas, Ukraine, Russia, Taiwan, China, Taliban, anything like that, be sure to check out the national security sit reps I put out on Substack. The link is in the description below. But thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.